Today, we're diving into a massive global issue that literally touches almost every single one of us. We're decoding the very real biological and financial toll of modern workplace stress. More importantly, we're going to look at exactly how human resources can step in to fix it. So let me ask you right off the bat, is your job pushing you way past your optimal performance zone? Because if you're feeling that daily grind weighing on you right now, trust me, you are absolutely not alone, and your experience is entirely valid. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly why that happens, what it physically does to you, and what organizations absolutely must do about it. Here's our roadmap for today. First, decoding workplace stress. 2, where does stress begin? 3, spotting the warning signs. 4, the true cost. And 5, strategies for stress reduction. Okay, let's jump straight into Section 1, decoding workplace stress, or the biology of the grind. To really set the stage here, we have to understand that stress is, at its core, a biological fight-or-flight response. The researcher Hans Selye actually pinpointed this way back in 1936. But we need to normalize something right away. Not all stress is a bad thing. On one hand, we've got eustress. That's the good, desirable kind of stress. It's that pressure that actually motivates us to get up, focus, and solve a tough problem. But then, of course, there's distress. That's the undesirable stress that, when you just leave it unchecked, leads straight down the path to burnout. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how that transition happens. Notice how you start way over on the far left with boredom, but as the pressure ramps up, you climb right into that beautiful, green, ideal zone of optimal performance. The danger is when you just keep adding pressure. You eventually tip right over the edge. You pass through strain directly into the red zone of delusion. You know, that place where we all try to convince ourselves that a 4th cup of coffee is going to magically fix everything. And finally, you crash into complete burnout. Moving right along to Section 2, where does stress begin? Let's talk about triggers in the workplace. So how do we actually trigger this biological response at work? Well, it usually boils down to 2 main categories colliding. On one side, you have your environmental stressors. These are the external pressures your team faces every day. Things like crushing workloads, totally unclear role expectations, unsafe conditions, or just that looming fear of job insecurity. But on the other side, you have personal stressors. These are internal drivers, like your specific personality traits, maybe going through a really difficult life stage, struggling with ambiguity, or dealing with an intense personal need for perfection. And hey, we really have to remember that when these stressors hit, it is completely physically measurable. Stress is absolutely not just all in your head. It actively fires up your HPA axis, that's your hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal glands. Your body literally spikes hormones like cortisol, along with biological markers like salivary alpha amylase. It's a very real, very physical reaction to your environment. Which brings us to Section 3, spotting the warning signs. Let's diagnose those symptoms. What's really wild is how quietly cognitive and emotional red flags can just completely sabotage your daily focus. We're talking sudden memory blips, constant worrying, unusually poor judgment, anxiety, agitation, feeling totally overwhelmed, or just sudden moodiness and anger. Now, these are internal mental symptoms, right? So they often go completely unnoticed by managers until it is way, way too late. And watch how this builds into the physical and behavioral symptoms that team leaders absolutely must watch for on the floor. Aches, pains, nausea, or catching every single cold that goes around, those are your physical red flags. Behaviorally, you might see a star performer suddenly start procrastinating, withdrawing from their friends at work, developing nervous habits like pacing or nail biting, or even turning to alcohol and drugs just to numb out and relax at the end of the day. That brings us to Section 4, the true cost, and how organizations are paying the price. $150 billion. Just let that massive number sink in for a second. That is the staggering estimated annual cost of stress to the U.S. economy alone. And that hit comes from a brutal combination of absenteeism, skyrocketing health insurance claims, and entirely lost productivity. And to put a global lens on this, a study of UK employers showed a cost of about £1,035 per employee every single year. But here is the truly fascinating and honestly terrifying part. The vast majority of this financial bleed actually comes from something called presenteeism. That means people are physically showing up to work, but they are so deeply stressed out that they're functioning poorly, they're making errors, and ultimately, they're costing the company more than if they had just stayed home in bed to recover. Because the ultimate organizational cost here, it's burnout. It's a hugely complicated physical, mental, and emotional reaction to just unceasing levels of high tension. It produces terrible feelings of hopelessness and stagnation, and when untreated distress leads your team straight into burnout, organizations suffer massive turnover and face severe long-term health impacts among their staff.
So let's get into the solutions. Section 5, Strategies for Stress Reduction. This is the HR roadmap.
So the real game changer is this structured, three-tiered HR approach to stopping, managing, and treating stress. Notice how logical this flow is. Primary interventions aim to prevent tension from happening at all. This means proactive job redesign or creating flexible working schedules. Secondary interventions equip your employees with coping skills, using things like mindfulness and resilience training. And tertiary interventions, those are to assist the highly stressed employees who are already hurting, using direct counseling or employee assistance programs to help get them back on their feet. To actually execute this on the ground, we can look to the World Health Organization. They put together this highly systematic, action-oriented cycle for handling workplace stress. It's a continuous, proactive loop designed specifically to help HR departments structure their response over the long haul.
It kicks off with detecting those early signs of stress, which lets you analyze the specific risk factors in your unique workplace. Then, you design a targeted action plan and you roll it out. Finally, and this is absolutely crucial, you evaluate those interventions to see what actually worked and then loop right back to the beginning to constantly improve the environment.
But before we wrap up this explainer, we do have to remind ourselves that while organizations absolutely must take the lead, individuals play a vital role too. You have a personal responsibility to build resilience through your own daily habits. Things like organizing your tasks by priority, maintaining a decent diet and exercise routine, building a strong social support network, practicing relaxation techniques like yoga or meditation, and honestly, just learning how to set boundaries so you avoid overcommitting. It has to be a dual effort. Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question to challenge your own workplace culture. Is your organization actually managing stress, or are you just reacting to it when it's already too late? Take a really hard look around your office this week and find out.